I'm Fox with FoxeoGames, and this is Alice Madness Returns on the PC, released in 2011. It's also available on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. I purchased my copy through Steam a while back during a sale, and it's worth noting that after attempting to play the game again for this review, I ran into problems validating the product key. The EA launcher that starts with the game insists that the game isn't registered and that the key has already been used. I visited EA's website in a browser, attempted to register the game the same way, on the same account, and it worked. I was then able to launch the game properly through Steam. Alice Madness Returns is the sequel to American McGee's Alice, which released for PC back in 2000 and is a puzzle platformer with third-person action combat. Whether you played the first game in the series or not, is this trip into Wonderland worth the price of admission? Let's find out. As always, we begin with the PC port. I've got some major criticisms here, but thankfully there are relatively easy solutions for them. The PC port has separate controls for sound effects, music, and voice volume, as well as a subtitles option. The game is best played with a controller, but mouse and keyboard works as well, and you're able to rebind the keys. Please note that the game has a known bug with keyboard controls, which can cause a certain key to fail to function during gameplay. Please see the PC Gaming Wiki linked in the description for more details and a workaround. As for graphics options, this is where Alice goes astray. The lack of options combined with a default frame rate lock of 30 FPS is just madness. Sorry, that was a terrible pun. Options include gamma control, resolutions up to at least my max of 1920 by 1080, anti-aliasing on or off, 3D stereo, which shouldn't be here since it's not a graphics option, motion blur, post-processing on or off, dynamic shadows, and several levels for NVIDIA physics. If you're having performance problems, lower NVIDIA physics first, as this can tank your frame rate, especially during intense combat. On an older system, I found that in certain areas a high physics setting reduced my frame rate by up to 80%, a staggering hit to performance. As I mentioned earlier, I have some complaints. Firstly, there aren't a lot of options here, and the ones that are here are generally just on-off options. I would have liked more control over the level of anti-aliasing, as well as several options for shadow details. There's no anisotropic filtering, screen space, ambient occlusion, vertical sync, nor is there an option for windowed or borderless windowed mode. There are also no choices for texture quality, something we'll touch on later. Now you're probably wondering how my game is showing such a high frame rate when I complained about the 30 FPS lock. It's true, the default configuration for the game locks the frame rate at 30 frames per second, with no in-game option to change it. Fortunately, if you follow the instructions in the PC Gaming Wiki I linked in the description, you can get the game to run at a frame rate of your choosing, as well as disable VSync and modify anisotropic filtering. Of course, it should never be necessary to make the player edit configuration files in a text editor just to get standard graphic options like VSync and frame rate, but that's what we've got here. You can change the game difficulty, although normal is a fairly decent challenge as is. Also, if you've got the bonus content, you can change it here, including alternate dresses and weapons for Alice. The alternate dresses all come with gameplay modifiers, such as increasing your damage to make the game easier or eliminating health drops from enemies for additional challenge. Even if you didn't originally get the bonus content for the game, you can still unlock it by simply modifying a configuration file. Once again, see the PC Gaming Wiki for more info. In the graphics department, Alice Madness Returns is a bit of a dichotomy. The general art direction and aesthetic is superb. From beginning to end, the developers masterfully capture the weird and eccentric world of Wonderland. From the beautiful to the outright ugly, everything has a certain charm to it. Alice is simple yet masterfully rendered, and the way her dress changes to fit the various areas of the game is a really nice touch. The level of animation on Alice is amazing as well, from her flowing hair to the windswept dresses. Characters and enemies in the game are uniquely freakish and sometimes outright shocking, and I genuinely anticipated what crazy creature would pop up next. There's a lot of detail in the construction of the world of Wonderland, and it more than does justice to the beloved fantasy fiction. Unfortunately, the same level of detail was not put into the textures. At 1920 by 1080 resolution, many of the floors, walls, and objects have textures so simple and low resolution, it's impossible not to notice their jarring lack of quality. To make matters worse, these incredibly low-resolution blurry textures sometimes fail to line up properly as they are laid out in the game world, sometimes exposing a glaringly obvious black space between misaligned pieces of the game world. Now, I turned off the motion blur, but I maxed out all of the other settings, including the settings only available in the config file. That is, anisotropic filtering at 16 times, VSync off, and the frame rate set to 146. That's right, you add 2 to the target frame rate you're looking for, and my target was 144, so I got 146. Given that this 2011 game runs on the super popular and well-optimized Unreal Engine 3, and given the incredibly low-resolution textures and lack of additional features like screen space ambient occlusion, I was sad to see that during intensive scenes, my powerful gaming PC would sometimes drop into the 40s. However, as I stated above, turning down NVIDIA physics will almost certainly resolve those frame rate drops. A list of my PC hardware can be found in the description. The game features a variety of levels with unique themes to each, from the mysterious forest to the burning hot lava pits to the underwater city. Just as soon as you feel like you're getting visually bored of one area, the game throws an entirely new level at you. Overall, a masterfully beautiful art aesthetic does its best to overcome graphics that are lacking on the technical side, and unfortunately doesn't always succeed. For sound and music, I do have a few complaints. While the sound effects are not the best of the best and could have done with some more editing, they're more than sufficient for the game and generally fit the aesthetic pretty well. The music is good at setting and reinforcing the atmosphere, but there's nothing catchy or memorable. In certain cases, the music was little more than a driving bass beat, but it generally works surprisingly well at establishing the mood and ambiance that the game was targeting. The voice acting is a mixed bag. Many of the actors do a superb job, but some sound positively phoned in.
The carpenter sent me.
For starters, the carpenter is a pusillanimous, parsimonious, pettifogging moron.
Actually, it's not just phoned in, but it's half-baked phoned in. Much of the voice work just lacks that intensity and the volume that the scenes demand, creating a discordant imbalance between the inflections and pace of the voice acting and the intensity and action in the scene.
A temporary setback, a minor hindrance, a trivial impediment.
Sadly, I found Alice's voice actress to sound too mature and motherly to fit the character of Alice. I expected Alice to sound a lot younger and less mature, yet both her voice actress and the writing itself portray her as a very wise, self-confident woman whose experiences in the world contrast sharply with her youth.
Idiot. I should have left you in bits. Come, the least you can do is help me discover what's going on.
When it comes to the story in Alice Madness Returns, there's no avoiding the fact that the game's world, characters, and plot are all at least partially derived from an existing work of fiction. There will always be the debate of how faithful a game must be to the original material, but that's a discussion for another day. I evaluate the story in the game as a standalone unit, and with that, it's actually pretty good. I wasn't a fan of the strange art style used during some of the cutscenes. It's sort of paper mache aesthetic, but I never skipped any of the exposition. I was genuinely interested in seeing what happens next. This isn't some grand space opera or deep JRPG plot, but some genuinely interesting characters combined with the eccentric world of Wonderland make it worth paying attention to. The story will occasionally throw you a curveball, seeming to set itself up for an obvious next move, but doing something else entirely. Any video game story that I don't feel compelled to skip is solid in my book. Get it? Story? Book? Sorry, that's another really bad pun. But what about the gameplay, arguably the most important part of any game? Alice Madness Returns is a puzzle platformer featuring some third-person action combat. You will be jumping, double jumping, triple jumping, and floating your way around the world of Wonderland, from platform to platform, bouncing here and there, unlocking new pathways through a variety of environmental puzzles. You have access to various weapons that also double as tools for solving puzzles and finding secrets. You've got your primary weapon, the Vorpal Blade, your bread and butter attack. The Pepper Grinder functions as a projectile weapon and also allows you to manipulate certain objects in the environment. The Clockwork Bomb, which can distract enemies, blows up like a bomb and even activates pressure plates. The Umbrella allows you to block weaker attacks and deflect projectiles necessary for overcoming some enemies. There are a couple more weapons as well. You can upgrade some of these weapons like the Vorpal Blade or Pepper Grinder using the teeth that you collect throughout the game. Upgrades are done by the start menu at any time during play. Another cool feature is one that mimics an element from other games, and it's known as Shrink Sense. You have unlimited access to a potion that allows you to shrink to an incredibly small size, entering small areas that the normal-sized Alice is too big for. However, another use for this shrink sense is that which you've probably seen in many games before. When you use it, you gain a sort of sixth sense, and secret areas, hints, or invisible platforms are revealed to you. You could almost think of it like the Witcher sense from The Witcher 3. This is incredibly useful for pointing you in the right direction, giving you hints for how to solve the environmental puzzles, and for navigating the numerous invisible platforms spread throughout the game. Another interesting touch is that you cannot jump while in Shrink Sense, and once you exit, your view of invisible platforms slowly fades away. This adds a layer of challenge, especially when these platforms are moving, as you have to navigate the platforms while simultaneously popping in and out of Shrink Sense to keep the platforms in view. When you're not busy traversing the dangerous and complicated world of Wonderland, you'll probably be engaged in combat. Like many third-person action games, you can fight with or without locking onto enemies. Once locked on, Alice maintains her view on the enemy. You can shift targets while locked on as well. Combat is surprisingly more complex than it looks and a lot more complicated than you would think. After all, this game is about Alice in Wonderland, so you'd imagine the combat would be an afterthought. Not so. The handful of weapons at your disposal requires careful consideration, as some situations demand the use of one particular weapon, perhaps even a combination of several weapons. Simply hacking and slashing with the Vorpal Blade will get you killed pretty often, even on normal difficulty. You need to take advantage of your really cool dodge ability, which features Alice shifting out of view and rematerializing a short distance away. You can use this to dodge most attacks, as well as break free from certain entrapments. You will be required at various times to juggle dodging, blocking, and attacking, and often in a specific order at specific times. Many enemies are immune to your attacks if you simply spam them. They must be rendered vulnerable first. You will be required at various times to juggle dodging, blocking, and attacking, and often in a specific order at specific times. Many enemies are immune to your attacks if you simply spam them. They must be rendered vulnerable first. You may need to hit a specific part of the enemy with your pepper grinder projectiles or deflect a projectile back at your opponent before they become susceptible to your Vorpal Blade and other weapons. And you often have to do this while avoiding attacks from other smaller enemies. If you don't learn the specific tactics for taking certain enemies down, you will not be able to proceed through the game. There are some collectibles in the game as well, known as bottles and memories. Both unlock additional content that does not affect gameplay, such as concept art and story exposition. The game even features a few shoot-'em-up levels for variety. Heck, they even threw in some ice ramps that you can slide down, Mario 64 style. When it comes to gameplay, there's quite the variety, both in combat and in the puzzle platforming. So what's the verdict? Overall, I enjoyed most of my time with the game. While my affinity for puzzle platforms mostly faded away long ago, I found Alice Madness Returns to be a refreshingly unique take on the formula, providing solid combat as well. I liked the variety in the various areas, and the progression and introduction of new enemies, weapons, and puzzles occurred at a very good pace. I never felt overwhelmed or totally lost. Well, at least not for long. With that said, I do have some complaints. The camera can become an issue, and unfortunately it often rears up during critical moments. Most of the game lets you fully dictate camera movement, but from time to time the game will forcibly move the camera on you, whether you want it to or not. Most frustrating was the tendency for the game to try to wrestle the camera away from me during certain jumps, particularly in bursts of air that send Alice up into the sky. At these moments when I most need control of the camera, the game seems to throw it all out of whack, and I found myself repeatedly dying because of this. If the game would just let me control the camera, I could have avoided many unnecessary falls. Also, some rooms disable camera movement entirely, and it can be difficult to adjust to, as this sudden change will instantly shift Alice's movement direction, causing you to go backwards instead of forwards. As for combat, one-on-one encounters never caused me too much issue, but whenever I had to deal with numerous enemies at once, the lock-on became a problem. Alice would often lock onto some enemy other than the one directly in front of me, and my attempts to establish lock-on on the big enemy in the middle of a bunch of smaller enemies often failed, resulting in me taking damage or even dying. Since many enemies leave only a brief window of opportunity to attack, it was especially aggravating to lose most, if not all of that opportunity, thanks to a finicky and often unpredictable lock-on. These are just some of the times when you feel like the game is getting in the way of your ability to play it, and less patient players may find themselves quitting in frustration or settling for an easier difficulty. Overall, Alice Madness Returns is a surprisingly fun and complex game, featuring entertaining puzzle platforming that never pushes you too far, and combat that offers enough depth to feel more satisfying than the average platformer. With the caveats I mentioned earlier fully in mind, I still wholeheartedly recommend Alice Madness Returns, even at the current full Steam price of $20. If nothing else, at least put it on your wish list for the next sale. But what do you think of Alice Madness Returns? And if you haven't played it yet, would you consider playing it now after watching my review? Leave your comments below, like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to check the video description for links to my Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and all that good stuff. I'm Fox with FoxeoGames, and I'll see you next time.